Okay, Parshas Teitzei. Anyone that has listened or heard or read anything on this week's Parsha probably started off with the remez that many Svarim bring in Teitzei l'malchama aleivecha. That the pasuk says Teitzei when you're going to go out l'malchama to battle, to war aleivecha against your enemy. When the son of Hashem leikecha biyadecha, and Hashem is going to give him into your hands, you'll be victorious. V'shavisa shivyoi, and you'll take captives. Now, many have probably heard the remez that although this is speaking about an actual literal war that we go out against an enemy when Klal Yisrael wants to conquer more land, Rashi says Mechemes HaRishus, not one of the nations that we were commanded to go to war against, but if Klal Yisrael wants to annex another country, so they go out to war against one of their neighbors. That's what this pasuk is referring to. However, all the Svarim say that this is alluding to the Mechemes HaYetzer, to the battle against the Yetzer Hara. I'm sure you've heard this before, but I wanted to analyze this a little bit and see how different things in the pasuk here fit in. The reason why it's so important to discuss this is because the Mechemes HaYetzer, the battle with the Yetzer Hara, is something which we'd like to almost deny that it exists or somewhat ignore or to put on the back burner. But it's really something that we live with every single day of our lives. As long as a person's alive, he's being tested with something. If he's not being tested, that means he's on the Olam Amas. That's why we're sent down here. We're sent down here, to work our way through it, and that's how we build ourselves. Right? If life would be easy street without any spiritual challenges, we wouldn't grow spiritually. In fact, the Gemara says that Lasad Lavi, when Hashem is going to shech the Satan, he's first going to show him to the tzaddikim and to the Risham, and to the Risham he's going to look just like a little hair, this flimsy little Satan, this little tiny Yetzer Hara. And the idea there is that if a person never overcame the Yetzer Hara never grew, and therefore that battle with the Yetzer Hara never went up in Madrega. He just gives in to every little thing. The Yetzer Hara doesn't have to build himself up. However, if a person does fight the Yetzer Hara, for the tzaddikim, the Yetzer Hara appears like this massive mountain because the challenges, the tzaddik built himself up, so Hashem said, I'll give you a bigger challenge. This way you can continue to grow. If there's no resistance, anyone that ever did any exercise knows if there's no resistance, there's no gain.
No burn, no gain.
Right. No pain, no gain. No burn, no gain, whatever it is, right? There's a story with this guy that comes to the doctor. The doctor tells him, you're out of shape. You got to do more exercise. I want at least 60 minutes of exercise a day. So he says, okay, no problem. Doctor says, I want to see you in a month. Comes back in a month, and the doctor says, the guy doesn't look any better. In fact, he looks a lot worse. Doctor says, have you been doing your exercise? He goes, doctor, not an hour, 2 hours a day. He says, really? What have you been doing? So he says, I go rollerblading 2 hours a day. He goes, you don't look like you're rollerblading 2 hours a day. He goes, doctor, I promise, here's what I do. I put on my rollerblades, I get on the treadmill, I hold on and I press go. Right? So here's the guy, his rollerblade is going through life, he's rollerblading 2 hours a day, but there's no resistance. Right? So he's not gaining anything. He's not, right? Obviously, he's wasting his time. So if a person would go through life and wouldn't have Nisyanis, so then there'd be no purpose in living. The purpose in living is growing spiritually through our challenges and overcoming them. However, we still have to find ways. There are no life hacks for Nisyanis, but there are approaches that the Torah gives us, and how we're going to deal with the Nisyan of the day, and every day brings its own. So let's analyze the pasuk here a little bit. Again, the Svarim all say that this is referring to Mechemes HaYetzer, to the battle against the Yetzer Hara. So let's see. Step number one, you'll go out to war. So the Chavetz Chaim says that the pasuk here is telling you to be proactive. Don't wait for the battle to come to you, but you go out. You go set yourself up. Make sure that you're set up for success, because sometimes by the time you get to the battle, it's too late if you didn't set yourself up for success. Right? A good army is not an army that when there's a war, they can suddenly build up their army. The army is built before, the strategy is there before, the defense systems are there before, and that all has to do with all the Xeris, the Rabbanan. The Rabbanan put certain Xeris in place that we shouldn't ever end up coming to be over something midaraisa.
And that years ago.
What was that?
The beepers.
Exactly, right. That's a perfect example, the beepers, right? So, you got to plan it in advance. So when it comes to Mechemes HaYetzer, a person knows if I'm going to put myself in that situation, I'm going to end up having a big Nisayon, which is going to be maybe too difficult for me to pass. More about that later when we get into the Parsha Ben Tzvi murder a little later in the Parsha. The next thing, Aloivecha, against your enemy. So the first step in every war is recognize your enemy. More than that, recognize that there is an enemy. The Gemara tells a story. The Gemara says that Shimon HaTzadik was a Kohen Gadol, and he refrained from eating from the karbanis of a nazir. The person would be a nazir, so when he finishes his period of nazirus, he shaves off his hair and brings karbanis to the Bais Medrash. And Shimon HaTzadik would not eat from the carbon of a nazir because he was afraid, or the mode is purely l'shem shamayim. And the Gemara says a nazir really is like it's like a mix. It's a nice thing to do. It's a good thing to do. But he also brings a carbon chatas because in a way he's holding himself back from pleasures of this world, and that's something which a person has to know if it's the right thing to do at the right time and place. So Shimon HaTzadik did not eat from the karbanis. He says besides for one time, and he tells this story about a fellow that came and he was exceptionally good looking and had this beautiful long hair. And he comes to the Bais Medrash, he's going to shave his hair off and bring his carbon because he was a nazir. So Shimon HaTzadik asks him, why did you accept Nazirus upon yourself? Right, with these beautiful long locks that you have, why would you do that? So he said, I was a shepherd, and one day I was bringing the animals to drink at the side of some stream or some river, some lake perhaps, and I saw my reflection in the water, and I realized how exceptionally handsome I am. And immediately I started getting these thoughts that I could use that for an Aveira benefit. And then I turned to the Yetzer Hara and I said, Russia, Lama Atem Iskal, why are you taking pride in something which isn't yours? Hashem gave you beauty, why are you taking pride in it? So what's the key here? And Shimon HaTzadik said, wow, unbelievable, Nazirim like you, this should be Yirbu Kamoicha B'Yisrael, there should be more Nazirim like that, and I ate from that karma. So what was this person's key to success in overcoming the sudden massive Yetzer Hara which overtook him? So one of the tells of Rosh Hashiva, I don't remember which one it was, I think maybe Ramatul Katz, said that the idea was he addressed the Yetzer Hara in second person. He didn't say, I have a weakness. He said, Russia, you, evil one, how come you're taking pride? He was addressing his Yetzer Hara as if the Yetzer Hara are two separate entities. And he would have this conversation with him. And the moment he realizes, wait, there is an enemy here, there's a force trying to push me into something which is bad for me, that's the first step to success. Recognize that there's an enemy. Al Oivecha. It's well known and documented that Talmidim in Rad and Yeshiva said that on different occasions they overheard the Chavetz Chaim used to talk to his Yetzer Hara. He used to argue with him. He would, behind closed doors, but they overheard it. Someone once went up to the attic where the Chavetz Chaim used to go every day, and he would hear the Chavetz Chaim talking to himself and say, he played it all out at the soul charade, saying, it's from air, maybe, take it a little easier on your learning. He says, what? What do you tell me? It's very likely that it's in. It's documented in a couple of places from different people that over different conversations the Chavetz Chaim had with the Yetzer Hara. The idea there is that he's identifying an enemy. Once you identify your enemy and you learn your enemy, you study your enemy, now you can start to go to battle. When the son of Hashem is going to give him into your hands, if you're going to prepare in this way, you recognize your enemy, you prepare yourself in advance, then you will be successful in this battle. And you will capture its captives. So this is an interesting thing, and this I not originally planned on saying, but as I was driving here tonight, I was listening to a short, maybe 4 or 5 minutes of our Torah from our Rabbi Nissen Kaplan, Shlita in Eretz Yisrael, and he made a point of this. Shavisa Shiva means you will capture his captives, your enemy's captives. So it could mean you will capture the captives that you got from your enemy. It can also be said you would capture those things that he captured. You will capture his captives. Meaning as follows. The Gemara says, when a person does proper tshuva, so an aveira, which he had previously done, turns into a schos. So when he had gotten you once before, you are getting back. You're recapturing the Yetzer Hara's captives. Those things that he got, you're now getting back. And then again, this comes with a proper tshuva, which is very appropriate for the time of year. With a proper tshuva, you prepare yourself and say, okay, I know my enemy. I fell once. I'm not going to fall again, because now I know my enemy. I recognize him. I can see him coming. I can sniff him from a mile away. I'll prepare myself. That's tshuva. And with that, the Aveira turns into a schos. Now let's just analyze this idea. Why is it that an Aveira turns into a schos? It's like extra credit. You get a bonus because you did tshuva. I'm going to throw that in as a schos as well. The idea is here, because sometimes when a person stumbles, we go through life. There's no person, right? There almost was no person since the history of man began that never did an Aveira. However, if your Aveira is used as a springboard for something good, the net of that Aveira is a gain. So if it was used to bring a person through tshuva closer to the Rabbi Shalom, well, not Aveira Lishma. I don't know
What is this?
that term. But it means Aveira was done. It was done for the wrong purposes.
You're learning from it.
But now I use my mistake to grow. I have this error in my history. What am I going to do now to build myself and be greater that this should never happen again? So at the end of the day, I am now a greater person, somewhat due to that error, as long as it was followed up with the proper tshuva. So that was a building block in this new level that I've reached through my tshuva. So we'll get schar for that building block as well. Correct. That's what the Gemara says. The Gemara says that zdeinis naslish kishkagais, and if a person has tshuva me'ava, zdeinis naslish kizchuyas. That is a very amazing. It turns into a schos, as long as it's tshuva me'ava, if it's the right type of tshuva. Now, so then the plus goes through the parish of Eishes Yifas Tayar of the Teitzei, which a Torah says it's too great for you to overcome, and the Torah gives you a way to navigate it. Now, at the end of the day, it's clear from the Psukim and from Chazal that the idea is that you shouldn't actually end up doing this thing, but we're not going to tell you can't do it because that's going to be too overwhelming. The Torah says here are the steps I want you to take in order to get to where you want to go to, in order to fulfill the taiva that a person has, and through those steps, the taiva will be diminished, and hopefully it won't end up happening. Now, just the idea that the Torah says this nisayon is too great for you to overcome, and therefore I'm going to give you a way to navigate it, tells us that every other nisayon can be overcome. Otherwise, the Torah would give us loopholes. What was that?
Except the Avodah
Zarah. At that point, the Chachamim killed it. So there's an interesting mindset. I heard the story from an uncle of mine, Rabbi Nachum Pfeiffer, who's a Rav in Bayswater, New York. Pfeiffer, you know Rabbi Pfeiffer? So he said of this Kabbalah Gemara, he said there was a guy came to his Rebbe, Chassid comes to his Rebbe and says, Rebbe, I'm struggling with an nisayon of kas. I very quickly lose my temper. I get angry and I snap back at people. What should I do? So the Rebbe says to him, sit in my Bais Medrash. I'll get back to you in half an hour. Okay. Guy's sitting at a back table of Bais Medrash. Rebbe calls over the Rabbi and he says, you see that guy sitting there? Walk over to him holding a coffee in your hand and accidentally spill the coffee over him. Drop your coffee and get him all dirty and wet. So now this guy's sitting on the back table. He hears the Rebbe whispering this to the Rabbi. So he's like, all right, I know what's coming. Guy looks over a few minutes later, he's got his coffee, and he says, Talmud, do you know where the next mincha is? And as they're talking, he drops the coffee on him. Of course, the guy sitting there doesn't flinch. He was prepared for it, right? A few minutes later, the Rabbi comes in and says, come into the office. He comes into the office, and the Rabbi says to him, what happened to your shirt? He says, someone spilled the coffee on me. So he goes, did you lose your temper? Did you get angry at him? The guy says, Rabbi, come on. You're not going to pull this off on me. We all know what happened. He says, what do you mean? He said, I know that you told him to spill the coffee on me. I was prepared for this. So the Rebbe says to him, exactly, I wanted you to hear that. You should know every time someone does something to you, Hashem sent him to you to give you this nisayon specifically. You know that this was a premeditated thing, and this was meant to happen, and it was, this had to be there for your good, whether it's for therapeutic purposes, or sometimes the Rabbi wants to give a person a certain Yeshua, a certain, shefa, but the Rabbi says he still needs to earn it. So I'm going to give him a nisayon, just allow him to earn it. If you knew that this was coming every single time, you know that it's prepared and was sent your way, so the challenge just got diminished. So realize every single time that someone does something to you, and you have this urge to get angry, or you have this instinctive reaction to flare up, realize that was also planned. It was also sent. You happen not to have overheard the whisper, but it was meant to be. So this is the message of this Chazal that says, this is one nisayon that you're not expected to pass, but every other nisayon was meant to be. It was set up there. You were put there in order you should be able to pass it. So that's the lesson of that Chazal, which says that the nisayon of each Sifas Torah is something which cannot be overcome in a natural way. We have to go through the method that the Torah gives us. Now, let's fast forward a little bit, and we'll see this is highlighted once again in the parsha of Ben Seir. There are a couple of very, very difficult things to understand in the parsha Ben Seir. Ben Seir, to make a long sugya short, right? So there's this young man, he was recently bar mitzvah, and he steals from his parents, and he eats meat and drinks wine, and he develops an addiction, a habit, let's call it. And Chazal say he was warned once, he got malchus already, he does the same thing again. Chazal say if he doesn't get stopped in his tracks right now, the end game is that this person is going to be a murderer one day. He's going to be a highway robber. He's going to kill people to take their money because his parents are going to run out of money. He's going to be out of cash. He's going to have to feed his habit, and he's going to have no other way to do it than to, to come onto highway robbery and murder and take people's money. So, there's a lot of details. The Gemara says machlokes if it ever happened. It's very difficult for it to happen. So let's go with the sheet that says it never happened because it's so difficult to happen. But the Torah is still giving it to us to teach us some lessons in it. So let's get the lesson. Let's try to extract those lessons. Yeah. So let's extract those lessons from the sugya, right? So the pasuk says, what are we going to do to this fellow? He's going to get misa. He's going to get killed in Bezdin. And Rashi says from Chazal, Yomuz Zakav al Yomuz Chayav. We prefer that he dies before he murders somebody rather than wait for him to murder, which means the Rabbi Shalom knew that there was no way out. If he follows this path, he will murder. It's not like he might, maybe, who knows, one day. It's going to happen. So might as well let him die innocent, without any blood on his hands. He'll go up to Shemaim, at least he's clean. Rather than wait for him to develop into a murderer and then have him killed for murder. So far, I think we understand. Where the question arises is as follows. The 4 misos the Bezdin has at their disposal. Skila, Streifa, Sayef, and Chenek. Skila is stoning, Streifa is burning literally, but they would... Hereg is Sayef. 2 words for it in the Gemara. Hereg means being killed, but Sayef is by the sword, that's decapitation, and Chenek is through strangulation. Now, that's the 4 that I mentioned go in that order, with Skila being the strictest, and Chenek, strangulation, being the least strict of the 4. Now, a killer, a murderer, now no one's ever come back to tell us which one was more difficult. So, we trust Chazal in any case, but that's the Gemara. It's actually machlokes, but it's machlokes in Makos and in Sanhedrin. Very good. That's a shout out. Right to the Makos Chabura. Number 1 and 2 is a Makos. That story is not a Makos. No? That story is in Nazir and in the Durham. So the number 1 and number 2 is a machlokes, which one came first, Skila or Streifa, and Hereg and Chenek, Sayef and Chenek is machlokes, which one comes first. But everybody agrees that Skila is more chamer than Sayef, than Hereg, right? So now a murderer gets, let's call it number 3, not top level, not second level, 3rd level misa. This Ben Sarah murderer is getting number 1. How is he getting something stricter than if he would have developed into being a murderer? How could that be? If the whole idea is that he's setting himself up for murder. How's he getting a punishment which is more strict than the murderer himself gets? So I believe I saw this for Rabbi and Kotler Zeichet Tzadik Levracha. So you do it. Some people you call it even, but not great, not a greater. That's a very famous question. So Rabbi and Kotler takes the following approach. I think it was Rabbi and Kotler. I saw this from him. If I'm wrong, please forgive me. Rabbi. So Rabbi says as follows. He says, a person fell through the nisayon of murder. It's hard to imagine, but he got so angry at another guy, and they were that's it, I've had it, and he killed the person. Came with a passion, caught up in the moment, and he did something really, really foolish. He's going to pay for it. He's getting killed in Bezdin. But then there's a guy that 20 years earlier, someone said, the path you're taking is going to end up bringing you to murder. And he says, oh, so what?
No passion.
He's not caught up in the moment. He knows this is where it's going to get him. And he's making a calculated decision to be careless with his life. So why is he not going to do tshuva? We'll get to that next. How do we know he's not going to do tshuva?
He's saying the B'tzara Murray cannot plead insanity.
Exactly. He's not close to that. You are setting yourself up. Right. So this is really tapping back into what we started the parasha with.
He knows what's going on.
A person's mission is, yes, to pass the Nisayon, but more so, prepare yourself. Set your path in life in a way that you'll be successful in Ruchnias. When a person is setting his path in life, knowingly that this is going to bring to spiritual demise, now he's more guilty than the actual person who fails in his sight. Failing in his sight, that's not a good thing. He's going to get punished for that. But there's some consideration. He's not getting the greatest punishment. But if a person, knowing in advance, is not taking the steps of precaution, and he's just allowing his life to go, go with the flow, wherever I live, and whatever happens, without taking that Teitzei l'milchama, without being proactive and saying, wait a minute, I got to make sure I never reach that point. Now for that, he's more guilty than the murderer himself. And therefore his punishment is going to be greater. Now I want to go to the other part of Mitzvah murder, which you mentioned, that isn't he ever going to do tshuva? So this is a famous question asked by many. Not isn't he going to do tshuva, but it's asked a little bit differently. And I was walking through 18 Bais Medrash about 20 minutes ago, half hour ago, and I heard someone talking about it over there.
Did you read it before he dies?
That
right
there's
before he dies, after
that there's a famous stira. There's a contradiction here because by Yishmael is lying under the tree and he's dying from dehydration and thirst. His mother has him out in the desert.
He does tshuva.
So the pasuk there says, even before he does tshuva, right? The pasuk there says that Hashem heard as koil anar ba'asher hu sham, while he was there, while he's lying there under the tree. So Rashi says, what do you mean while he's lying under the tree? Where else did you hear it from? He's crying from under the tree. So Rashi says that the Malachim came to the Rabbi and said, Yishmael's grandchildren are going to cause the Yidden to die from thirst. And now you're going to save him. So what does Hashem answer? What does Hashem answer? Ba'asher hu sham. Right now he's innocent. It's true. I know that one day down the line his children, his grandchildren are going to cause Jews to die from thirst. But right now he didn't do anything wrong.
We're judging from what is.
Over 7.
That wasn't that. It was the Yidden were traveling and they were thirsty and they came out with these jugs, these leather filled with hot air, and they thought they were going to drink and they inhaled it and they died.
But I thought also that he was going to do tshuva. So if he's going to do tshuva.
Rashi doesn't say that there. That's true that at the end of life he did do tshuva, but Rashi does not mention that there. Rashi says that was Hashem's answer to the Malachim. Ba'asher hu sham. Right now he didn't do it yet. We look at the man in the moment. So the question is, right, Ben Sarah Murray, we're killing him based on his future.
Yeah.
Look at the man in the moment. Right? So Rabbi Yankel Galinsky Zechat Tzaddik Levarcha says as follows. It says by Ben Sarah Murray, it says as follows. His parents bring him to Bezdin and they say, B'neinu zeh Sarah Murray, our son he's gone off and he rebelled. Einenu shomea b'koleinu. He doesn't listen to our voice. Says Rabbi Yankel Galinsky. Yes, if a person is destined to go off to the wrong path, he's still not guilty. But the moment he shuts out anybody that might ever want to help him, now he doesn't stand a chance.
2025.
What was that?
Prior to today.
Yeah. So the moment the person shuts up.
God forbid so many people.
Please don't apply it today.
Well,
Okay.
we're not in the next. We don't have the next meeting now. We'll probably move that for everyone.
But there are very few people, as much as they might say, there are very few people that the path to their heart is totally shut off and not willing to listen to anything anywhere.
What do you
They can find their inspiration in
drink
things.
wine and eat meat.
So yeah.
Everybody.
No, yeah, that's not the problem. There is it. Yeah, right. Chazal says apikoros. Rabban calls apikoros. We're answering a different question. We're answering the question is he's on the path to murder, but he didn't get there yet. So how come you're punishing him now? The answer is that again he set himself up that he can never veer off that path. How did he set himself up to not be able to veer off that path? Einenu shomea b'koleinu. Doesn't listen. Doesn't want to take anything in. He's not open for discussion. This is my way, and that's how it's going to be. That guy doesn't stand a chance. He's not allowing anyone to influence him. Right? Exactly.
Well, how do we know? Maybe in a year now he will open up.
Something
that they say, "Oh, I'm not listening."
So he's not actually. That guy's not actually not listening. I'm not listening to you, but there's some back.
How would you judge that?
So if the Torah says "Einenu shomea," then we know he doesn't listen. That's the key is that he shut out all messages. I'll share with you another thing from my Rabbi, Nissan Kaplan.
Today we can't
And this is something really which
today we don't understand it.
we can't judge it. We can't judge it, but the Torah can tell us that.
Right.
I'll share one more thing from my Rabbi. He said oftentimes when a person is in a situation of Nisai and the taina against him, the complaint that Rabbi Shalom has on him is okay, it was one shot. That was my second shot. It's okay.
The Messiah.
L'chaim says, "Kol bayis sheni nishma kamayim." Simon bracha.
Definitely some rough.
He said as follows. Sometimes we'll learn this from Bilam. Right? What was the time against Bilam? Hashem said he can go, and he knew it was wrong to go. But 3 times along the way, Hashem sent him a little message. Right? The donkey veers off the path. The donkey squeezes his leg. The donkey stops. You're not listening, buddy. Listen. You're getting messages. Someone that's not open to listening will continue to go. And that's why we're confident that this Ben Sarah Meyer is never going to find a way out. And let's just take this over to the end of the parsha, just the idea of not thinking ahead. This week is Parshas Zachar. Doesn't mean that next week is Purim, but we're getting close to Yom Kippur. This week we read Parshas Zachar at the end of the parsha. They say from the Chassam Sofer that he said that on a year that are 2 Adars, so we have 13 months between the Parshas Zachars. Right, between the Shabbos full Purim this year is not. There's only 1 Adar, but next year will be. So how could we be Yotza? The din is you're not supposed to forget. If you mention something once a year, that's considered remembering. But if it's more than 12 months apart, how do you remember? So he says you should have kavanah on Parshas Ki Teitzei. We read the psukim of Parshas at the end of the parsha. Again, this year it's not necessary, but just mentioning it. So at the end of the parsha it says, remember what Amalek did? That Amalek, he cooled you off along the way. So Rashi explains, what does it mean he cooled you off? It's lashon karcha, which means he made you cold. So Rashi brings the famous mashal. The mashal is that there's a hot tub, a hot bath that's scalding, and nobody can go in there. And one guy comes, and he jumps in, one wise guy, right? And he jumps in, and he scalds himself. It comes out, his skin is burnt a little. But everybody else now sees it's possible, and he's able to do it. So what's the title on this person, and what is Amalek called? Just want to focus on his title in this Rashi. It says, Ba ben Belial. Belial is lashon like a wild young man came. But Belial is an abbreviation. This is the words of Rashi. When he's describing the story, he says there's this hot tub, and this Ben Belial comes. Belial is an abbreviation of the words Beli, oil. Don't bother me. Right. I have no responsibility. I'm doing what I want to do right now without thinking of what the consequences are going to be. The guy's a fool. He's going to burn himself. I don't care. Right now I have this urge to break the fear that everyone has. I have to show that there's nothing to... I'm jumping in. It's going to burn in a few minutes. A few seconds it's going to burn. That's not part of my calculation. I don't even look a moment ahead. Right? So this is... Right? Not even a moment ahead. Not even the immediate result, immediate consequence of my actions, I'm not taking into consideration. This is the exact opposite of what the parasha began with. Parasha begins with Ki Teitzei, plan ahead, think ahead. Every step that I do, Ben Sarah Meyer, what's going to be in 20 years from now? What are you going to look like if you continue this path? Right? The way for fighting the Yetzer, the Ki Teitzei, if you want the Son of Hashem Elokecha v'Yadecha, start thinking ahead. What's this act going to be? If I'm hanging out with that guy, where is that going to take me? If I'm hanging out in this crowd, if I'm going to Shul, if I'm not going to Shul, what's that going to do for me? Where is that going to bring me? And one thing leads to the next, leads to the next, leads to the next. And sometimes it could be one small, tiny act. It could be the difference maker in a whole life. Right? I remember once, just in closing, I grew up here in Spring Valley, and the guy next door to us wasn't a frum guy. And once we were outside in front of the house, and a guy came collecting door to door. He came to my house, and my father gave him $1 or whatever, and then he goes to the next house, and he looks to see if there's a mezuzah. No mezuzah, and he skips it. Right? Most of the block wasn't, I don't think, even Jewish. Right? It wasn't what Spring Valley Muncie is today. And my father says to me, just imagine if the guy put a mezuzah on his door. Even if he didn't put a mezuzah, just had a symbolic one without anything inside. Already he would have had opportunity for the mitzvah of tzedakah. Right? And who knows where that would have brought him. This guy would have smoothed with him a little bit. Told him a guy was going door to door and he skipped this house because there was no mezuzah. Now, nobody would have envisioned that this mezuzah could bring to another mitzvah, but sometimes that's small decision. Sometimes you can envision it. Right, mitzvah gereris mitzvah, and avera gereris avera. So, it was a yid, but he wasn't a frum guy. He didn't have mezuzah on his door.
Oh, that's what I was
So sometimes a small little decision that we make can really be a life changer. Sometimes we don't know it. But at least when we do know it, we take these steps, these proactive steps that the Chavetz Chaim says, Ki Teitzei, that we go ahead and we initiate, not necessarily the battle, but we put everything in place that we are prepared for the battle with the Yetzer Hara. And then when the moment comes, the moment of Nisayon comes, the battle's not taking place there, the battle's already won before the Nisayon starts. Because sometimes at the point of Nisayon, it might actually be too late. It's already lost in the preparatory stages.
You said in the beginning, don't wait to make your army big. Make it big now, so then this
exactly. Right. So we're preparing. I know what my weakness is. I'm not going to go to that place because I know that triggers my weakness. I'm not going to talk to that guy, or I will talk to that guy because I know he gives me chizuk. Certain people, certain places, certain crowds just make you, motivated to do good things, and that keeps a person away from the sin. And again, the key is if a person's not having nisyonos, he's not living. The only people that aren't having nisyonos are on 306 underground. Right? Anyone that's still alive is having nisyonos. That's why we're here. So this parasha is essential for our continued existence in the right way. We should be zeicha. Our nisyonos are all there to build us, and we can grow from our nisyonos. And eventually we'll see the day when the Rebbeinu Shalom shachts the Yetzer Hara, shachts ha'malachamos meher v'yameinu, and then we'll be able to celebrate. We'll see this massive Yetzer Hara, and we'll say that's the one that we faced and we conquered. Meher v'yameinu, amen. Shabbos.